The question I really wanted to ask is this the end of the Labour Party as we know it?
I think in some senses, when Jeremy Corbyn won that election, as I said at a sort of immediate aftermath of that, the Labour Party had been transformed. It was a new party at that point. So what often happens actually in British politics is that you have a party with the same name, but it's completely different from what that party was 10 years before. It's like the famous problem of Trigger's broom. 10 new handles, 4 new heads, but still the same broom. So in the same way, if you think about it historically, to give a historical example, the Conservative Party by the end of the 1920s was a completely different kind of party in terms of the people who were in it, the people who voted for it, to what it had been before the First World War. It had changed basically from being an aristocratic party to being a business party, if you want to put it that way. So I think what happened with the Labour Party is that it was a shell party. Under the Blair and Brown, the party's membership had shrunk dramatically. There was almost nothing left. And then all these thousands of Corbynistas joined the party with great enthusiasm, and essentially it became a new party. Now the question is, what kind of party is that? And I think the issue, which is what we were alluding to a moment ago, is it going to continue being a traditional working class party, or will it become a party of the radical populist left, like say Podemos in Spain, or maybe the Greens in Germany, or Syriza in Greece, that kind of thing. I would have to say that that's an open question, because the other factor in this is the trades unions, who are still, of course, enormously powerful institutions in the Labour Party. And obviously they represent the traditional working class aspect of it. However, the leadership of the trades unions has moved a long way away from those organisations' traditional working class roots. So at the moment, we will probably have a party called the Labour Party around, but I suspect it is going to be less and less of a working class party. Now, in that case, to go back to the point you raised earlier, what kind of political force is then going to be able to articulate working class interests and identity and concerns? And that could have a rather bad answer if we're not careful.
So that for Tommy Robinson, it's a very rich scene for him to plough.
If things don't work out, yes. Fortunately, people like him are still largely not taken seriously or are discredited because of their association with thuggery and violence, which, not surprisingly, puts a lot of people off. The danger is that somebody will arise who is charismatic, persuasive, articulates the views and interests of a lot of people very effectively, but who doesn't have the kind of baggage that people like Tommy Robinson or the football lads or whatever they call themselves have.
Football Lads Alliance. But would you say the danger, but if someone came along who, we get a lot of shit actually for criticising Tommy Robinson ourselves. You know.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, you deserve it though. No, but the issue with him is, I've listened to his Oxford Union talk. He explains a lot of things quite articulately, very well. But it's the association with violence and thuggery, as you say, that for us is a problem. Like a lot of people want us to interview him, and we're like, well, he does say some things that are interesting and that are valid, but that association is a problem for us, right? But if someone was to come along and articulate the views and the needs and the interests of working class people up and down this country, who was not violent, who wasn't coming from that background, what's wrong with that?
Actually, I don't think there is anything wrong with that. I mean, I think what is
But you said it was a danger.
I know. Well, okay, and practically let me rephrase it or expand it slightly. I think it is very dangerous to have a significant block of voters whose views, concerns, interests are not being articulated.
Yes.
That's very dangerous.
Yes.
And one of the problems I think we've had in democratic politics in most developed countries over the last 30 years is the narrowing of the range of concerns and interests that are represented. Basically, if you're a university graduate and have a certain set of views and you're working in certain areas of the economy, things are pretty good. Your views are being discussed, but for a lot of other people it's not the case, and that's very dangerous. Now the question is, given that, what form does the politics that represents those currently unrepresented interests take? So if you like, in the past, working class interests were not represented at the end of the 19th century. So there were two different routes that their representation took. One was for them to be represented by radical but democratic parties like the Labour Party, parties that were not prepared to subvert civil liberties, were committed to preserving the main institutions of the democratic political process and the like. The other route, in, say, France, for example, was to go and vote for the Communist Party, a revolutionary party that, to put it mildly, was not interested in maintaining democratic norms or liberal rights. So when we are talking about an unrepresented working class, or a working class that feels itself to be unrepresented, which amounts to the same thing, the question is then what kind of politics comes along to express it. If it's a kind of politics which does articulate their concerns and interests, but combines that with a kind of radical revolutionary rhetoric or a commitment to violence and the destruction of their political opponents, that's extremely dangerous. On the other hand, if it is a kind of politics which says, look, here we have a set of views and concerns that are not being taken seriously. We think they should be taken seriously, but does so within what you might call the rules of the democratic system. That can't help but be a good thing, because it means that the people who disagree with those views or who have queries about them will at least have to take them seriously and engage with them. And that's what happens.
This is the thing.
Right, can I just... No, we've been talking about this political figure. Maybe it's me because I'm not as au fait with politics as everyone. But we're talking about this figure who has led a movement that is a little bit revolutionary, addresses working class people's views. It's Nigel Farage, isn't it?
That's what I was about to say.
To some degree, yes, absolutely. The problem that I think Nigel Farage and his sort of like the element of UKIP he represented had was that he was articulating those concerns, but he also combined it with a kind of economic position, which personally I favour, but which was not going to, I think, appeal to the audience he was also speaking for. Because I think the crucial thing is that you've got, if you think of there being a four-way block, four quadrants really, if the vertical axis up here is this whole question of identity that we're talking about, the other axis is how you feel about economics still. And so you've got on the one hand down here a block of voters, largely working class, not entirely, who are both left-wing on economics and nationalist or culturally traditionalist. Over here you have a block of voters who share the cultural traditionalism but who are much more free market or less left of centre in economics. Now up here on the other hand you've got on the one hand the kind of people that the independent group are appealing to, liberal cosmopolitans, broadly free market, very globalist, and up here you've got the far left, you've got Momentum and the Greens. Now, the problem is that I think Nigel Farage is down in this quadrant, and his economic view, his views on things like national identity, opposition to the EU, they appeal to those working class voters over here, but his economic views did not. The big gap in the market, if you will, is for a party that is left of centre in economics, but traditionally nationalist, what I would call a national collectivist party. This is what the Front National in France is. That's what Marine Le Pen has turned it into. And I think that that's the kind of big gap in the market, if you will.
So it's like a left-wing Nigel Farage.